Hey guys, tonight's story starts with a fog you can taste, a knock you didn't expect, and a child-sized burlap mask staring at you from the hedge. You don't remember how you got here, just that it's All Hallows Eve, and someone insists you owe a debt in bread or blood. There's a bonfire behind the chapel. Someone's dancing. Someone else is definitely possessed. The baker says it's just tradition, but he's also wearing a deer skull and hasn't blinked in 10 minutes. And when a man in robes offers you a candle and a chicken bone, you're somehow supposed to know what to do. But before you get too cozy, take a second to gently tap that new hype button YouTube just added. It really does help little guys like me push through the algorithm. And be sure to like the video and subscribe, but only if you genuinely enjoy this strange little corner of quiet storytelling. Drop a comment with where you're listening from and what time it is for you. It's strangely comforting to know who else is drifting off with us around the world. Now, get comfortable, let the day melt away, and we'll drift back together into the quiet corners of the past. You wake up to shouting, which isn't that unusual, except this time it's coming from inside a bucket or near a bucket. It's hard to say. Your head is stuffed with the sort of woolly confusion that usually precedes either enlightenment or mild concussion, and the sky overhead is gray with the specific kind of menace that suggests something pagan is about to happen. There's a goat wearing a mask. This seems important. The mask is burlap, stitched crudely, with 2 uneven holes and what might be a smile or a snarl, depending on the light. The goat stares at you with the weary authority of a creature that has already seen too much today and would prefer not to be involved, but knows it will be anyway. You sit up slowly. Someone runs past holding a chair. It's on fire. The chair, not the person. Found another, someone shouts cheerfully, and you're not entirely sure whether they mean the chair or you. A second later, 3 more people dart by, each carrying a piece of furniture that clearly did not volunteer for this. One has a stool with 3 legs and a cushion that might be haunted. Another has a door, a literal door, from someone's home, possibly yours. You look around. Smoke is curling lazily up from the village square like it has all the time in the world. The bonfire is already a decent size, a lopsided tower of splinters and upholstery, and possibly a footstool with a vendetta. The flames crackle with the enthusiasm of someone who's just been given permission to speak freely after years of polite silence. A woman walks by holding a ladle in one hand and a small carved turnip in the other. She looks at you, nods once like you've passed some kind of test, and moves on without explanation. You dust yourself off. Not that it helps, and stand. The goat follows. No one is speaking directly to you, but everyone seems to know you're new. They do that village thing where they pretend not to notice, while definitely noticing. A child throws a potato in your general direction. It misses, barely. You wander closer to the bonfire, because apparently that's the kind of person you are now. A man in robes, possibly religious, possibly deranged, possibly both, leans over the flames and sprinkles what looks like flour but smells like vengeance. His beard is braided with ribbon, twigs, and what might be a chicken foot. He's humming. You ask what's going on. He stops humming long enough to say, "It's All Hallows Eve," as if that explains everything, then goes back to humming and possibly summoning something. No one will tell you the rules. Every time you ask, someone changes the subject or hands you something. You now have 3 apples, a feather, and a candle that won't stay lit. A girl with twigs in her hair tells you not to eat the apples. "Not tonight," she says solemnly, then grins and skips away. A group of children are playing something that involves sticks, mud, and dramatic falling. One of them is wearing what appears to be an actual bird's nest on their head. Another is dragging a stuffed sack with alarming reverence. You ask what's in it. He looks at you and says, "Last year's liar," then runs off laughing. You're beginning to suspect that no one in this village should be left unsupervised. Someone is chanting near the well. A group of elderly women stand in a tight semicircle. muttering into mugs and occasionally glancing at the fire like it owes them something. You try to approach, but one of them raises a spoon with slow, deliberate menace, and you decide now is not the time. The bonfire roars. Someone tosses in a cracked mirror and 3 mismatched shoes. A boy throws in a bundle of herbs. The flames turn green for a moment, and everyone cheers. I don't know why. You cheer anyway. The sun has started to dip, smearing gold across the rooftops, and the village smells like smoke, boiled onions, and barely contained chaos. You try asking again, what are we celebrating? A man hands you a piece of bread shaped like a face and says, to keep the spirits busy. Then he walks away, humming the same tune. The robed man was humming earlier. You're beginning to think this is less a festival and more a defense mechanism. The goat is still following you. At some point, someone paints a line of ash across your forehead. You didn't see who. You only noticed when the old woman near the well gave you a nod that could mean approval or warning. Possibly both. As night folds itself gently over the village, more people gather. Some are masked. Some are painted. One has antlers and no pants. They stand in a wide circle around the fire. The chanting resumes, or evolves, or decays, hard to say which. The robed man raises his hands, and everyone goes quiet. The goat sneezes. Let the night begin, he intones. No one moves, not even you. Someone places something in your hands before you've even opened your mouth to ask what's going on, which, considering your current level of confusion, feels deeply unfair. It's warm. It's lumpy. It smells like burnt oats and mild warning. You look down. It's bread. Or it was bread. Once. Now it's shaped vaguely like a human face, complete with raisin eyes and a twisted mouth that seems to be silently judging you. Don't eat it, the woman says, voice low and serious, like she's delivering a prophecy or a health warning. It's not for you. It's for them. You try to ask who them is, but she's already halfway across the square, shouting at a child for putting a beet in the fire. You look at the loaf again. One of the raisins falls out and bounces off your thumb like a tiny omen. Behind you, the goat snorts. There's a table now. You're almost certain it wasn't there before. It's set up near the bonfire, covered in a cloth that might once have been white, and now resembles a pattern of enthusiastic accidents. People are approaching it in quiet procession, each one carrying something odd. A pair of shoes with holes worn clean through the soles. A candle stub wrapped in string. A fish skeleton decorated with dried marigolds. And more of the bread. So much of the bread. Some loaves look cheerful. Others look like they've seen things. One has a smile that could only be described as legally suspicious. You're nudged forward by a boy missing 2 teeth and most of his patience. He tells you to hurry up before the bell rings, which is strange because you haven't seen a bell or a tower, or, come to think of it, a consistent explanation for anything. Still, you walk. At the table, a hunched man, with a quill in his hair and flour on his eyebrows, nods solemnly. You place the bread face on the cloth. It lands with a soft thump, and the sound echoes more than it should. The man peers at it, frowns, and gently rotates it so the mouth points east. You're not sure why. He says nothing, but he does tap the table 3 times and whisper something in a language that may be Latin or possibly very tired French. You step back. A girl behind you puts down a small wooden spoon tied with hair. She doesn't meet your eyes. No one meets anyone's eyes. The table has a gravity to it now, like it might suck you in if you stand too close for too long. The fire crackles. The sky darkens further, somehow skipping twilight entirely, as if even the sun doesn't want to be here for this part. You make the mistake of asking someone why the bread looks like faces. She tells you it's tradition. You ask what kind. She stares at you like you've asked why chickens walk or what water is made of. They need faces, she says, so they remember what they were. You decide not to ask any more questions. A man with a Walking stick shaped like a snake begins to hum, low and slow, like a song meant to lull something ancient. Others join in, their voices rising like smoke, curling around the square, thick and off-key. The table begins to creak. No one touches it. No one has touched it since the offerings were placed, but it creaks anyway. The kind of sound that makes you clench your teeth on instinct, or prayer, and then the wind shifts. It smells like cold earth and candle wax and something faintly sour, like milk that's had ideas above its station. Everyone stands still. You're not sure if it's reverence or fear, possibly both. You glance at the bread. The raisin eyes seem darker now, or deeper, or maybe you're just projecting. Don't turn around. Someone whispers next to you, far too close. You weren't planning to, but now it's the only thing you want to do. You can feel it, whatever it is, standing just beyond your shoulder, breath made of fog, watching the bread, watching the table, watching you. A dog begins to howl, long and low. The goat makes a noise that sounds like disapproval and resignation. The humming stops. A baby cries, or a cat. You can't tell. Your hands feel very empty. And just as suddenly as it began, it's over. The air lightens. The wind forgets where it was going. The table is empty, completely. The cloth is still there, still stained and sagging, but the objects, bread, bones, buttons, spoon gone. No one says anything. The man with the quill nods once, deeply, like a page has turned in a book no one wrote down. Everyone starts moving again, quiet but relieved. Someone laughs. It's a small laugh, nervous, like testing a floorboard after the creaking stops. You try to speak. You don't. You look down at your hands and wonder if they've always been shaking. The goat walks ahead of you, like it knows the way back. You follow, because someone has to, because the bread is gone, because now they remember. Someone hands you a turnip and a spoon and walks away without a word, as if that explains anything. The turnip is cold, damp, and disturbingly bulbous, and the spoon, if it can even be called that, has the edge integrity of a buttered thumb. You look around for instructions, perhaps a sign or a human with basic social graces, but everyone else is already hunched in eerie silence, hungrily attacking their own vegetables like they've wronged them personally. You sit on a low bench that creaks like it's making a threat. Position the turnip between your knees and begin to dig. The spoon immediately bends, offended. You try again with slightly more optimism and slightly less technique, and manage to gouge out a chunk the size of a regret. The turnip stares up at you like it knows you're not emotionally equipped for this. All around you, the villagers are carving with the urgency of people trying to finish before sundown or summoning. A child to your left is sobbing quietly but determinedly scooping away with a fork. Another child across the square is chanting in a low voice while painting their turnip with some sort of red paste. You're not convinced it's paint. No one else seems to mind. A woman walks by holding a candle and a dead crow. She pauses, glances at your half-mangled vegetable, and offers a nod that says, "It'll do," before moving on. There's a man using what looks like a dagger to make surprisingly delicate eye sockets. He whistles a tune that keeps switching time signatures. His turnip has cheekbones, real cheekbones. Meanwhile, yours now resembles the face of someone who's been told they won't be getting soup tonight. You poke at the mouth, which keeps turning into a sneer no matter how hard you try for a smile. You whisper something reassuring to it. It does not respond, probably for the best. A voice nearby explains, "They need to see out." You turn and find an older woman staring at your turnip with the calm authority of someone who's already buried 2 husbands and at least 1 demon. She gestures at the crooked eyes you've carved and says, "If they can't see out, they find something else to wear." Then she pats your knee and walks away, chewing something suspiciously crunchy. You go back to scooping. The square is quiet except for the scraping of spoons and the occasional whimper. A few lanterns flicker into life, stuffed inside finished turnips like tiny haunted souls. The smell is awful burnt wax, earthy rot, and the particular sourness of too many root vegetables in one place. A man nearby mutters angrily at his lantern, insisting it looks too judgmental. A woman disagrees, saying hers is supposed to resemble her mother-in-law and therefore must look angrier. Eventually, you manage something that vaguely resembles a face. The eyes are uneven, the nose is a dent, and the mouth looks like it's planning something illegal. Still, it's yours. You feel a strange kind of pride. You carefully shove a candle stub inside and light it. The flame sputters, then holds. The light flickers out through the eyes and casts two perfect circles on the ground. They look like portals. You try not to think about that. A bell rings. Not from a tower. From somewhere inside a bucket. People begin placing their finished turnips along the edge of the square, lining them up like sentries. Some are beautiful. Others are clearly possessed. Yours looks like it's reconsidering its life choices, but you nestle it proudly between one with horns and another that's just teeth. A child next to you starts singing something with no clear melody and less clear words. It makes your stomach tense for reasons you don't entirely understand. The fire flares again. The turnips glow. The woman from earlier returns, her crow now replaced by a wooden ladle she's using as a staff. She surveys the rows of flickering faces and says, "Good, they'll be pleased." Someone asks who. She smiles, with too many teeth, and replies, "Who do you think the faces are for?" You feel your own face go very still. The goat appears again, headbutts your knee, and sits beside your turnip, like a guard or a witness. The flames flicker. Somewhere in the woods, something howls and then immediately coughs, like even it is embarrassed by the cliché. No one laughs. Everyone waits. And the turnips keep burning. The children appear at dusk, which is not ominous until you realize how organized they are. There are at least 9 of them, all wearing masks made from things that should not be on faces: twigs, old potato sacks, one disturbingly detailed duck beak. They move in a pack, silent at first, until one of them breaks into a laugh that sounds too grown, like someone pretending to be a child, and the others all join in because apparently that's normal here. You're trying to mind your business. You've got half a bowl of turnip stew, a spoon that tastes faintly of iron, and a bench that smells like damp wood and shame. But the children see you. They always do. One of them points and shouts something you don't understand, and the rest scatter like gremlins let off their leashes. Moments later, they're around you, close, expectant. "You're new," says a girl with twine braided through her hair and something possibly living in her pocket. "He hasn't played," says a boy with a mask that looks like it was made from a shredded hymn book in spite. "Perfect," says another, licking their thumb and smudging something on your sleeve. "For luck," you think, or to mark you. They surround you like a ritual and explain the rules in overlapping whispers that you have to piece together like a cursed jigsaw puzzle. There's a game. It's played every All Hallows Eve. You pick a door. You knock twice. Not once. Not 3 times. 2. Then you run. Simple. Except the doors aren't just any doors. They're those doors. The ones no one uses anymore. Some are nailed shut. Some are slightly ajar, even when there's no wind. One has ivy creeping in through the keyhole, which feels like a red flag if you've ever seen one. They lead you to the first house, a stone thing slouching at the end of the lane, its roof sagging like it's had a long life and no thanks. The door is crooked and worn, the wood split in a way that resembles a grimace. There's a mark above the handle chalk, or maybe claw. "No one's lived here since the screaming stopped," someone says brightly. You hesitate. Someone hands you a stick. You ask what it's for. They tell you to drop it behind you after you knock. You ask why. They shrug. Tradition. This is not reassuring. Still, you walk up the path, the weeds parting in a way that feels entirely too deliberate. The door looms. Your hand is sweaty, your breath loud. You raise your fist and knock. Twice. The sound echoes, more than it should, like the house has a long hallway inside, full of echoes and things that don't like being disturbed. You drop the stick, you run. The kids scream with delight as you bolt back to the group, heart pounding and legs doing that shaky thing where they think about mutiny. Nothing happens. Not immediately. The house stays quiet. You exhale. Want to try the red door? One asks. Absolutely not. You say yes, because something in their eyes says you don't really have options here. The red door belongs to a house that doesn't look like it should still be standing. It leans against itself in a way that suggests mutual agreement. And there's moss growing in the shape of something that might be a handprint. You approach it like you're in a dream you hope isn't yours. Knock. Twice. This time, the door rattles. You freeze. The kids cheer. You consider collapsing into the dirt, just to make a point. Instead, you drop the stick and run again. Faster this time. Past the children. Past the goat that has somehow reappeared. Past a woman roasting something. Suspicious on a spit. You don't stop until you reach the square, breathless, full of adrenaline and dread, and the overwhelming certainty that the door wasn't locked, that it never was. Later, someone tells you that the rattling is just the wind, but there is no wind tonight, and you still haven't picked up the stick. You arrive late to the chapel, which feels rude even by your current standards. There are still candles lit, though they flicker with the nervous energy of things left unattended too long. The air smells like ash, wax, and something underneath that reminds you of wet wool and mischief. You step inside slowly, hoping not to interrupt anything sacred or recently cursed. But the chapel is empty. No quiet sermon voice echoing from the stone walls. No creak of polished boots pacing the aisle. No awkward eye contact with parishioners pretending they weren't just elbow deep in questionable rituals an hour ago. Just silence. And robes. They're folded neatly over the press. Altar. Father Eldrick's robes gray with the red stitching, the kind that says, humble, but definitely took a full week to embroider. His satchel is there too, resting beside a basket of turnips with tiny crosses burned into them. That's new. You lean in. The robes still smell like incense and stern advice, but they are very much unattached to a person. You glance around. The chapel isn't big. It's not the kind of place someone can hide in unless they're exceptionally small, invisible, or suddenly a ghost. You check behind the altar anyway, because you're still operating under the fragile hope that there are reasonable explanations for anything anymore. There are none. Just dust, cobwebs, and what might be a forgotten apple, except it blinks. You back away. There's a scroll half unrolled across the pulpit. You lean closer, expecting maybe a sermon about humility, or at least another lecture on why the dead deserve our respect, even if they've started knocking on windows again. But the scroll is blank, not freshly blank, but scraped, as if something once written has been clawed off with careful impatience. Then you notice the prints, hoof prints, leading away from the altar, right down the center aisle, muddy and deliberate. Not horse-sized, not quite goat, either smaller, sharp, like something upright, and very opinionated, had a brisk stroll out of the sanctuary. You crouch and touch one. It's still wet. The mud is dark, almost black, and smells faintly metallic, like iron or defiance. You follow them, not because it's a good idea, but because you don't have many better ones. The prints lead out the chapel door and toward the woods. Of course they do. Nothing wholesome ever goes into the woods in stories like this. It's always toward. Never stayed in the village, or waited patiently by the soup. No, always the woods. A woman is outside sweeping the path with a broom that has more stick than bristle. She watches you with an epaun, expression that says she knows things and isn't telling them to people who don't bring biscuits. You ask if she's seen Father Eldrick. He left, she says flatly. You ask when. She glances up at the sky like it owes her an apology before the bells stopped. There haven't been any bells all day. You stare down the path. The hoofprints veer off just past the edge of the cemetery, where the trees start to lean a little too close together. You ask if he went alone. She shrugs, like that's a stupid question. Something called him, she says finally, adjusting her grip on the broom. He followed. You want to ask what? You really do. But she's already humming. A tune that spirals and twists and ends in a note that makes your chest feel oddly tight. She keeps sweeping. The prints darken in the dirt. You go back into the chapel. The candles have burned lower. One has gone out entirely, leaving a tiny trail of smoke that curls toward the rafters and disappears like it's trying not to be noticed. You stare at the altar. The robes haven't moved, but the turnips have. Just slightly. Enough that you're certain they weren't facing you before. One of them has a carved mouth now. It's open. You do not check if it bites. They find you by the well, pretending not to be waiting for anything, and press the robe into your arms like it's a gift you can't refuse. It's rough, scratchy, and smells faintly of damp grain and nervous intentions. Sackcloth, heavy with age, or purpose, or both. The mask comes next, stitched burlap with eye holes that don't quite line up, and a single tear right down the middle, like someone got halfway through escaping and changed their mind. Put it on, the man says. His face is kind, but his voice is not. You ask what it's for. Silence, he replies, then adds, and remembrance. As if that clears anything up. The village square is already full of them, people draped in matching robes, heads bowed, masks in place. No one speaks. Not even the usual murmuring or throat clearing, just the shuffling of feet on packed dirt and the occasional wheeze from someone clearly allergic to tradition. The air hangs thick with wood smoke and something sweet underneath it, like honey that's been left too long in a dark place. You put the robe on. It's heavier than you expect, not in weight, but in mood. The mask slips over your face, and the world tilts slightly, muffled and warped. You blink through uneven eye holes and catch glimpses of others doing the same, adjusting their masks, pulling hoods tight, becoming faceless together. The tear in yours flutters when you breathe. It feels like being watched from your own face. A bell chimes. No one moves right away, but something shifts in the atmosphere. A tension releases or settles. Hard to tell. Then they begin to walk. Not fast, not slow. Measured, like each step is being counted by something beneath the ground. You fall into step, near the middle, the robe tugging at your knees. Someone bumps your shoulder but doesn't look. No one does. You've seen parades before, festivals, carnivals, small-town processions where someone carries a flag and someone else pretends to know what the flag means. This is not that. There are no banners, no music, just bodies in sackcloth, masks with mouths sewn shut, and the quiet hush of ritual. You don't speak. You don't even try, but someone does. A whisper, soft and low, right by your ear, but not quite touching. Words you don't catch. Or maybe you do, and your brain decides not to keep them. You turn your head slightly, enough to catch the figure beside you. Still, masked, not looking. You keep walking. Another whisper. This one behind you, closer to the tear in your mask. Your skin prickles, and not just from the fabric. The voice is familiar in the way that thunder is recognizable, but impossible to place. You want to say something. You do not. Because now you remember. You were told not to speak. Someone ahead of you stumbles. The procession slows but doesn't stop. Two masked figures help them up, one on either side, and continue as if nothing happened. The fallen one mutters something under their breath. Their mask is gone. They are gone a moment later. Not dragged, not taken, just no longer there. The line closes without hesitation. Your fingers tighten around the edge of your robe. You focus on your steps. 1, 2, 1, 2. Like the beat of a song no one sings out loud. The whispers come again, weaving in and out of your ears like smoke through a crack in the door. They say your name. You don't flinch. The procession winds through the village, past the chapel, past the turnip lanterns, still burning low, and finally into the field near the woods where the grass grows in spirals no one explains. A circle has been trampled into the earth, wide and deliberate. Everyone steps in without breaking stride, forming a ring around. Something in the center. It's a figure. Sackcloth robe, mask, torn, exactly like yours. They stand completely still, arms at their sides, facing no one and everyone. A child steps forward from the ring, places something at their feet, a small loaf shaped like a face, and steps back. No one else moves, not even the wind. The whispers stop. The figure in the center tilts their head, just slightly, just enough to make your stomach lurch. Then they vanish, not walk away, not collapse, just no longer there. The bell chimes again. Everyone turns and begins walking back the way they came. No one speaks, but as you pass the edge of the circle, something tugs at your mask. Not hard, just a little, like something trying to get a better look. The table is far too long for the number of people sitting at it. It stretches from one end of the hall to the other, like it's trying to escape, covered in a faded cloth that may once have been white, though now it's more of a blotchy gray, with opinions. Candles flicker down the center, pools of wax frozen mid-drip, casting shadows that stretch far beyond their actual size. You don't remember sitting down, but here you are. The plate in front of you holds a fish, whole, eyes still in, staring directly at you like it knows things. Its mouth is open, slightly, like it's mid-sentence or mid-complaint. It smells faintly of pond and consequence. Next to it is a slice of bread that is not just stale, but already well into its second act of decay. Green, furry patches bloom across its crust like it's trying to join a different food group entirely. And then there's the bowl of milk. Pure, still. Not steaming, not chilled, just there, watching. You're not sure if you're supposed to eat. You glance to your left. A man with cheeks like weathered apples stares forward, unmoving. His hands are on the table, palms down, fingers slightly curled as though waiting to receive something that never arrives. To your right, a woman with braided hair and empty eyes hums something without a melody. The kind of tune that makes your bones want to fold inward. Across the table, a child dips a spoon into their milk and brings it slowly to their lips, only to stop an inch away and hold it there. Not moving, not blinking, just holding. No one chews, no one speaks. Under the table, something brushes your leg. You look down. It's the dog again, the one with the torn ear and the eyes too human to be reassuring. He sits beside you, tail still, staring up at the plate. His nose twitches toward the fish, then toward the bread, then toward the milk, then back to you. He doesn't move to eat. You whisper, barely, asking if he's hungry. He lifts one paw and places it gently on your foot. It feels like a warning. Someone coughs at the far end of the table, a wet, gravelly sound that echoes like it was meant to summon something. You glance down the line and realize there are more people now, or at least more figures. Some are wrapped in shawls that move with no wind. Some wear masks that appear stitched to their skin. One is just a cloak, draped around the shape of nothing, its plate empty and spotless. The fish on your plate blinks. You don't scream, mostly because you're not sure if sound works here. A woman 2 seats down lifts her fork with precise, trembling fingers and presses it gently into the moldy bread. She raises a piece to her lips, opens her mouth, and swallows it without chewing. Her eyes close. When they open again, they're no longer her eyes. You push your plate a few inches away. The dog whines, just once, quiet, sad. You reach down to pet him, but your hand stops short. He's not there anymore. The chair beside you is now occupied. You didn't hear anyone sit. They're wearing a robe darker than the room, with hands that look like they've never forgotten a single touch. Their faces turned away, but you feel their attention like static in your teeth. You, Don't look at them. You don't need to. You understand now. This isn't a feast for the living. It's a table of offerings, of reminders, each dish placed not for sustenance, but for memory. The bread for what's already rotting, the fish for what once saw too much, the milk untouched for the ones still waiting. A bell chimes. You don't know where from, but everyone rises, all at once, chairs scraping back in a low, synchronized groan. Plates are left where they are. Candles flicker. The child sets down their spoon. You stand too, unsure if you're supposed to, but too afraid to be the one who doesn't. The dog is waiting at the door. This time, he does not look back. You're not sure why you toss the coin in. No one tells you to. There's no sign, no ritual explained. You're just standing beside the old stone well at the edge of the village square, staring down into the dark, and something about it feels expectant, like it's been waiting all evening for someone, just foolish enough to be polite. So you drop it, a small worn coin from your pocket, something stamped with a face you don't recognize, though you're certain it's been watching you since morning. It falls. Longer than it should, really. There's the soft splash you expect. Then nothing. Then something. A voice. Faint at first, like it's remembering how to use a throat. Scratchy and low. But familiar. Not just familiar times yours. Asterisk, not the way your voice sounds now, but the way it might if you'd spent decades alone in a cave thinking about every mistake you ever made and learning to pronounce each one perfectly. It says your name 3 times. You step back, nearly trip over a root that definitely wasn't there before, and immediately do the thing no one in any story should ever do. You lean closer. The well is perfectly still. No wind, no ripples. Just the voice again, rising up like fog through your spine. It doesn't echo. It doesn't ask permission. It, asterisk, knows. Asterisk. It speaks a date you don't recognize. Then it speaks a name you do. You want to stop listening. You don't. The words are odd. Half-remembered things said to people you barely recall. Twisted slightly, like the voice is pulling them apart to see how they work. It laughs at one of your jokes, not the funny kind, the other kind, the ones you thought no one heard. Then it hums. A tune you used to sing when you were 7 and afraid of the dark. You haven't thought about that melody in years, the voice remembers. Behind you, a small hand grabs your sleeve. You jump, spin, nearly fall again. It's the boy with the crooked smile and the fox pelt hood, the one who never seems to blink. He looks at you, and then at the well, and then back to you like you've just stepped on something sacred. You're not supposed to times. Listen, asterisk, he says, urgent but quiet. It likes when people listen. You ask what it is, he doesn't answer. Just looks sad in that way only. Children and statues can manage. Then he glances back toward the square like he's not supposed to be here at all and says, "Don't let it finish." Too late. The voice, your voice, says something you've never said before, but at times feels times true. The kind of truth that doesn't need evidence, just familiarity. It tells you where you'll be when you say it, who you'll be with, what you'll lose for saying it out loud, and it tells you you'll say it anyway, because you always do. The child tugs harder on your sleeve now, pulling you back, away, toward the edge of the stones. His hand is cold and shaking and very real. You step back. The voice quiets, but not before saying one last thing, soft, soft, softer than your own breath. Thank you. The boy lets go, doesn't look at you again, just walks off, quickly, back into the lantern glow and away from the well like he's afraid it might change its mind. You stand there a while longer, pretending the winds picked up. You convince yourself that your voice only sounded familiar because of the echo. You remind yourself that wells don't talk. Not really. But when you glance back down one more time, you notice the surface of the water is perfectly still, and your coin is sitting on top. It smells amazing in the worst possible way. Yeast and ash and something sweet that shouldn't be warm but is. The entire village has gathered in the long barn, lit by low lanterns and candles already dripping onto cracked wooden tables. Every person carries a loaf, a bun, a roll, or something that was a good idea right up until it started breathing in the oven. You clutch your own offering in both hands like it might try to escape. It's misshapen and slightly burnt on the bottom, but at least it's not twitching like the one in the basket across from you. The barn is silent except for the sounds of nervous bread handling and the occasional wheeze from the floury man to your left, who seems to be sweating butter. You've been told very clearly not to speak, not to make eye contact, not to smirk. Someone last year apparently laughed when one of the judges sniffed a cinnamon loaf too enthusiastically and had to be led away for their own safety. You don't ask what that means. You assume it involves a barn, some rope, and a lesson no one writes down. At the front of the room sits the judging table, long, uneven, slightly bowed in the middle like it's been groaning under the weight of unspeakable decisions for centuries. 3 cloaked figures sit behind it, still as stone. Their hoods are deep, their faces hidden, and their hands, if they have hands, rest lightly on the wood. No one has ever seen them arrive. No one has ever seen them leave. But every All Hallows Eve, there they are, waiting, ready to evaluate bread. You try not to think about the fact that your crust has a soft spot that jiggles if you breathe on it too hard. Names are never called. Instead, one of the judges lifts a hand, impossibly slow, and points. The person chosen rises like they've rehearsed this moment in nightmares. They shuffle forward, place their bread on the judging table, bow their head, and return to their seat. The judge on the left lifts the loaf with long, deliberate movements and holds it just under their hood. You don't hear sniffing. You don't hear chewing. But the loaf visibly sags, as if suddenly aware of its own flaws. The center judge tilts their head. The rightmost judge moves nothing at all. The loaf is placed back down. A long pause follows. Then a single candle on the left side of the barn extinguishes itself. The person who brought the loaf does not return to their seat. The bread stays. This continues. A girl with a delicate wreath of rosemary presents a braided ring of honey bread. The judges lean closer. The room gets colder. 2 candles go out. She does not scream, but her eyes say she might later, when no one's looking. Her bread cracks in half without being touched. You're sweating. You're not alone. Even the man with the impressive rye sculpture shaped like a cathedral is starting to tremble. Then the hand rises again, and it's pointing at you. You stand. You walk forward with the grace of a soggy boot and place your lopsided loaf onto the table. It lets out a small sigh, like it's given up. One of the judges leans in. A droplet of something not water slides off the crust and lands on the table with a sound far too loud for its size. You step back. Nothing happens. Seconds pass. Minutes. The air thickens like soup no one asked for. Then the center judge reaches forward with 2 fingers, presses gently on the top of your loaf, and nods. Just once. 3 candles go out on the right side of the barn. The crowd inhales sharply. You do not move until someone behind you tugs your sleeve. You turn, find your seat again, and sit down very, very slowly. Your bread remains on the table. It is steaming, but it is whole. The next name is never called. But the barn door opens anyway. You hear the bells before you see them. Soft at first, like wind through a metal fence. But then they begin to weave through the silence with purpose. Not a song, exactly. More like a rhythm built out of memory and menace. The chapel doors creak open as you approach, just enough for you to slip inside. And when you do, it's colder than it should be. Not just autumn chill cold, but candle wick won't catch. Breath turns white kind of cold. The candles are lit anyway. Every single one, in every single holder, balanced in strange places on ledges, on altar corners, even on the floor. Pools of wax collect like little ghosts that gave up early. They don't flicker. They don't move. It's as if the light is afraid to dance. but something else isn't. In the center of the chapel floor, surrounded by a ring of salt that you definitely didn't notice the first time you looked, there is a figure, barefoot, masked, and moving. The mask is bone white, long-nosed and blank-eyed, with red threading at the corners like someone tried to smile too wide and stitched it shut just in time. The robe is gray, not fresh, but not dirty either, like it came from a place where washing things is still considered polite. But no one has time for it anymore. Bells are tied to the elbows, each one slightly different in tone, so every spin, every step, every sharp, sudden motion creates a dissonant little melody that doesn't quite settle into a tune. You are not the only one watching. People line the pews. Not many. 15, maybe 20. All silent. All still. Not masked. Not robed. Just watchers. They don't blink much. A few of them hold candles. One has a loaf in their lap, untouched, slightly weeping jam from the middle. You try not to look too long at that one. A man near the door leans close and whispers just above your ear, "Don't interrupt." You nod, but your eyes stay locked on the dancer. They move like no one is watching, or like everyone is, and it matters. The kind of dance that isn't really dance at all, just motion made sacred by repetition. Every now and then they pause, head tilted sharply to one side like they're listening for a cue only they can hear. And then they start again, always within the salt ring, always barefoot, toes just brushing the edge but never crossing it. You're told they've always been here. Not the same person, of course. That would be silly. Probably. But always one. Every year. One who dances. No one volunteers. No one remembers asking. They're just chosen. Found outside the chapel at dawn on the first day of All Hallows. Asleep and already dressed. Mask already tied. Shoes missing. A small bell tucked into their mouth like a warning. You watch them for a long time. Something about the movement is hypnotic, yes, but also wrong. The timing is off. Not random, but not right. Like they're counting by. Sevens in a world of fours. Like the music they're dancing to is still echoing from a different place. It tugs at something behind your ribs. You don't know what it is, but it's starting to sway with them. You almost step forward. Almost. The bells hit a higher note, sharp and dissonant, and your left foot stops mid-lift like it just remembered it had boundaries. The man beside you does not look at you, but he sets a hand on your shoulder and squeezes, just once. The dancer spins faster now. Elbows up, bells flaring, mask fixed on no one and everyone. The salt stirs slightly with the wind of their passing, but never breaks. You realize they're crying, not dramatically, just enough that the mask shines in places it didn't before. The tears don't fall. They just stay. One of the watchers starts humming, low and tuneless. Someone else picks it up. The dancer slows, kneels, head bowed. The bells settle into silence one by one. Then, all at once, the candles go out. And when the smoke clears, the dancer is gone. Only the salt ring remains. You step forward, unsure, and notice a single bell left in the center of the floor. It's warm when you touch it, and it knows your name. The door bangs open during breakfast, which wouldn't be surprising if it weren't the chapel door and if breakfast didn't consist of wet barley and a cup of something that smells like scorched thyme and disappointment. Everyone turns. No one speaks. The fire crackles once, like it's trying not to get involved. Father Eldrick steps inside. Sort of. His robes are wrong. They hang off his frame like they belong to a man with clearer boundaries. His beard, which had been neatly trimmed just 2 days ago, now reaches his chest and is full of twigs, moss, and what may be a small acorn still deciding if it wants to sprout. His boots are muddy. Not the usual village mud, but something darker, the kind of sludge that comes from stepping where no one should. His eyes are bright and unfocused, like he's either had a revelation or forgot how doors work. In his right hand, he holds a scroll. In his left, nothing. which is strange because the door doesn't seem to have opened for him. He walks in, stops halfway down the aisle, and announces, not asks, announces that the saints are angry, and also possibly allergic to turnips. He says this like it's common knowledge, like you've all been warned before. Then he lifts the scroll above his head with dramatic flair and declares it was delivered by air. When pressed, he adds only, "It dropped from the sky on fire." No one wants to be the one to challenge that. You're still trying to make sense of his hair when a low ba echoes from the back of the chapel. Everyone turns again. There's a sheep, sitting in the third pew on the left, upright, still, watching. It doesn't blink. It doesn't chew. Its wool is perfectly white, too white, and its eyes are not the eyes of any sheep you've ever trusted. No one moves it. Father Eldrick continues, entirely unfazed by the sheep or by the fact that his left shoe appears to be missing. He unrolls the scroll, which is covered in symbols you don't recognize, scratched into the parchment, like someone wrote them during an earthquake while holding the quill in their mouth. He reads them aloud anyway, or he tries. What comes out of his mouth isn't a language, not exactly. It sounds like wind through a closed window, like the noise you make when you drop something important down a well and pretend it's fine. The sheep bleats again, louder this time. Its eyes flash. Not metaphorically, they actually flash. You are very suddenly aware that you do not know how to perform an exorcism on livestock. The priest doesn't pause. He keeps speaking, faster now, more urgent, like he's trying to reach the end before something hears him. The candles around the chapel gutter and dim, one by one, until only the one above the sheep stays, lit, and that one burns blue. Your neighbor leans over and whispers, "That sheep used to belong to old Maeve." You whisper back, "Used to." They nod grimly. "Disappeared last winter, with the milk pail." You don't ask follow-ups. Eldrick's voice rises. He says something that makes your teeth itch and the back of your eyes feel fizzy. The sheep stamps its hoof. A gust of wind blows through the chapel and extinguishes the last candle. Total darkness. A second later, the scroll bursts into flame. It doesn't burn like paper should. It curls in on itself, glowing violet, and then vanishes with a sound like a whisper that changed its mind. The priest drops his hands. Silence falls again, thick and waiting. Then the sheep stands. It walks down the aisle, slow and deliberate, each step echoing like it weighs more than it should. It stops at the altar, turns toward the congregation, and stares, just stares. Father Eldrick bows to it. Everyone else follows his lead. You do, too, because whatever that sheep is now, it has opinions, and it's clearly not finished having them. They don't ask, they decide. 1 minute you're standing near the back of the crowd, just trying to keep your cloak from catching fire on a passing torch. And the next, you're holding something warm, heavy, and unnervingly shaped like a human skull. Because it is shaped like a human skull, not like, oh how quaint, a skull motif, but more like someone got tired of waiting for a lantern and just improvised with remains and a bit of melted glass. The skull grins up at you, or maybe through you. The flame inside it sputters once, then steadies, pale green, too bright for comfort, too dim for safety. A woman with a braided beard and a hat made entirely of feathers pats your shoulder and says, "Don't lie." You laugh. Of course you laugh, because that's not the kind of thing someone says before a pleasant evening stroll. She does not laugh back. Behind you, the rest of the villagers take 3 steps away in perfect unison, like they've done this before, and ideally from a safe distance. A child with mud-streaked cheeks and a turnip lantern gives you a solemn thumbs up, and then ducks behind a man carrying what might be a ceremonial rake. And then the bell rings. Not the chapel bell. Not anything visible. But you feel it behind your teeth, in the softest parts of your spine. It doesn't clang or chime, it groans. Like something old and heavy has finally decided to get involved again. People fall into line. not in rows, not in pairs. More like a slow, sloping spiral that somehow always ends up behind you. You turn in place, looking for someone to pass the lantern to, but the braided beard woman's words echo in your head. Don't lie. The flame flickers, just slightly, like it heard your intentions and is not impressed. So you walk down the muddy lane, past the fields that are too quiet, through the archway that wasn't there this morning, but everyone accepts like it's always been part of the landscape. Your footsteps echo, even on grass. The lantern swings from your hand, casting long, strange shadows that don't seem entirely committed to following the rules of light and angle. The procession hums behind you, low, wordless, with the kind of tone that suggests meaning but absolutely no comfort. Every now and then, someone stops to leave something on the ground. Bread crusts, feathers, a single wooden spoon. You don't ask. You're not even sure you can. The lantern feels heavier the further you go, not in weight, but in consequence. Like the longer you carry it, the more it learns. You try not to think about that too hard. You try not to remember the thing you said last spring about this village and its enthusiastic relationship with superstition. The lantern remembers. The flame dances high for a moment, casting light across a tree with bark shaped like a face you once knew. You do not comment on that. Ahead, the path narrows. Trees press closer. The air thickens. The smell of damp moss and something faintly metallic curls around your ankles. The lantern glows a little brighter, its light pulsing to some internal rhythm you can almost predict. Almost. You pause once, just for a breath, and someone from the line behind you whispers, "Don't stop." It notices stopping. You don't ask what it is. The lantern pulses again. At the edge of the woods, there's a stone plinth, cracked, moss-covered, shaped like an altar or a table or a warning, depending on the angle. You feel it before you see it. The pull, like gravity, but older. You walk up to it. The lantern flares. The flame turns red, and you understand, without explanation, without logic, without comfort, that this is not the end of the procession. This is the beginning. The road doesn't start out strange. At first, it's just dirt well worn, slightly damp, the usual collection of unfortunate puddles, pretending to be shallow. You think maybe this will be fine. A simple walk, some candles, a little ceremonial muttering. You've seen worse. There was that one midsummer festival where everyone had to crawl backwards through sheep gates to humble the soul. You got splinters in places you didn't know had wood proximity. This can't possibly be worse. Then the wind changes. It doesn't blow. Exactly, it circles, tugs at your sleeves, rustles the leaves under your feet instead of the ones above. The lantern in your hand sputters for a moment, offended, then burns brighter. The road bends left, then right, then left again, in a way that somehow leaves you facing the direction you came from, only the trees aren't the same. They're taller, thinner, and they whisper, not loudly, not in full sentences, just fragments, soft syllables that hook behind your ears and settle at the base of your neck. Most of them aren't words you understand, but every now and then, your name slips through, not shouted, not urgent, just observed, like a child pointing out a beetle. Look, there it is. The others in the procession don't seem to notice, or they do, and they've simply decided not to acknowledge it, which feels worse. You glance back. Their faces are calm, lit by their own flickering lanterns. A few are humming again, that same low, circling tune with no real beginning or end. It makes your teeth buzz. You keep walking. The ground beneath you begins to change. What was once packed earth now gives slightly with each step, like it's considering letting you sink. The air thickens. Somewhere to your right, you hear a child giggle. Not a happy giggle, the kind that comes right before they show you the thing they buried in the garden. You don't look. The first pebble hits your shoe with a clink. You stop, just briefly, and reach down. It's round, Smooth, warm, like it's been in someone's hand for hours. You toss it aside, keep walking. A few steps. Later, another clink. You check your pocket. There's a pebble, a different one, flat, oval-shaped. Definitely not one you put there. You check the other pocket. 2 more. You are now officially collecting rocks without consent. No one else seems to have this problem. The trees lean in closer. Branches brush your shoulders, though none of them bend. You don't want to check, but you're fairly sure they're still upright. It's just the road doing the leaning now. At one point, you swear you've walked uphill for 10 minutes, only to end up next to a puddle you recognize by the very specific dead leaf floating in it like a warning sign. Your pockets get heavier. A stone the size of your palm clunks in somewhere behind your back. You whirl around. No one is close enough. The procession has stretched, pulled by the road's whims, scattered like beads on a crooked string. You breathe. The lantern flares. The trees whisper again. Louder now. Not words, exactly. Just meaning. Something ancient and amused. You are not the first to walk this road. You are not even the 100th. Some walked further. Some turned back. But all of them carried the weight. You keep going because stopping feels like inviting an explanation, and you're not sure you want one. Eventually the road straightens, slightly, just enough to trick your body into thinking it knows where forward is again. The stones in your pockets shift with every step, clacking like teeth. You don't remove them. You don't want to see if they've changed shape. Ahead, the light bends oddly, like it's moving around something that isn't there yet. You keep walking. The procession follows. The road hums under your feet, and the trees are still whispering your name. You hear the song before you see the source. It curls around trees, seeps through fog, and presses against your ribs like it's trying to remember how lungs work. High and slow and old. Not the kind of old that gets archived in dusty hymnals, but the kind that predates melody as a concept. It slips through the procession like a draft from a forgotten door, and everyone subtly straightens their backs when it reaches them. You do too, without quite realizing it. Up ahead, through a break in the trees, there's a small clearing where the procession begins to bunch up. People step softly here. No shuffling, no murmuring, just the shuffle of cloaks and the occasional clink of uninvited pebbles still nesting in your pockets. You try to shake them out quietly, but the sound echoes like a warning. She stands in the center. Not on a stage, not on a stump, just there, in the exact middle of the hush. A woman with hair like damp straw and a gown stitched entirely from what looks like curtain lace and very poor decisions. She doesn't blink, doesn't sway, just sings. Her voice is sharp at the edges, soft in the middle, and thick with a language you don't recognize but somehow almost understand. It's a language built for dusk, made of syllables that only fully exist when whispered. She opens her mouth, and something ancient and aching floats out. Beside her is a man, barefoot, hooded, holding a flute that is very obviously carved from bone. Not bone-like, not theatrical prop bone, bone. You can see the marrow lines. There's a crack in the center sealed with beeswax and a bit of twine. He plays one note, then another, and they don't seem to go together until the woman's voice weaves between them and makes them behave. It's beautiful, and wrong, and getting louder. Someone taps your elbow. A young girl with eyes too wide and a lantern that doesn't flicker. She says, quite politely, "You have to hum now, or they'll know." You want to ask who they are. You really do. But the song shifts, just slightly, like the melody got distracted, took a wrong turn, and ended up somewhere hungrier. So you hum, badly, at first, like someone trying to join a choir halfway through a funeral. But the sound feels familiar. It drags something from your memory you don't recall putting there. The rhythm isn't constant. It bends, twists. Every time you blink, the tune changes key or tempo or direction entirely. and you have to adjust like you're dodging raindrops in a windstorm. The girl hums steadily beside you. Her voice never wavers, never hesitates. You try to copy her pitch, but it slips through your throat like oil. The bone flute trills. The woman's voice climbs, impossibly high, then drops low enough to vibrate through the soles of your feet. One of the villagers stops humming, only for a moment, maybe to swallow, maybe to breathe. The song stops. Everyone freezes. The woman turns her head not all the way, not humanly, and fixes her gaze on the man who stopped. He's shaking. You are too. You don't realize until you hear the little rattle of stones in your pocket matching your nerves. The man mutters something. The bone flute gives a single sharp note. The woman sings again. The procession moves on, and the man stays behind. He doesn't scream, but something does. You hum louder. Not perfectly, not gracefully, but loud enough that your chest starts to ache. The girl gives you a quick nod of approval, then fades into the crowd. The path continues ahead, winding deeper into trees that bend just slightly out of sync with the wind. You keep humming. The melody keeps changing. Your voice strains, cracks, reforms. The bone bell rings from somewhere in the distance. Once, twice. The next time you blink, the sky is darker. The song is different, but your mouth keeps moving. They slow as the path widens. It's not a stop exactly, more of a shared hesitation, a ripple in the rhythm of feet and flickering lights. The trees open just enough to reveal a small clearing, and there it is, carved into the dirt like it's been waiting all night, the crossroads. It doesn't look dangerous. That's the first mistake. Just two dirt paths, intersecting at a slant, forming a crooked X that refuses to be symmetrical. There's a faint shimmer in the air above it, like heat rising from stone. Only it's cold enough here that your breath still ghosts in front of you like it's trying to escape. No one talks now, not even the humming girl, whose voice had seemed surgically attached to the procession. They all just tighten their grips on their lanterns and shift slightly to the right, stepping deliberately, carefully, definitely not looking left, which of course makes you look left. You're not trying to be difficult. It's instinct. The same one that makes you check a pot that says, "Do not open," or sniff the milk after someone's already told you it's bad. Your head turns, just a little, just enough. The trees are thinner here, bent, not like wind-blown bent like they're leaning forward in expectation. Their branches don't sway, they strain. And in the middle of the third tree down, maybe 10 feet off the ground, there's a man. You think. It's hard to tell where he begins and the bark ends. His coat is patchwork, stitched from moss and cloth and things that probably used to crawl. His skin isn't quite right, too smooth, too pale, like something sculpted out of wax and left too close to a fire. But it's the smile that does it. Wide, wider than wide. It curves unnaturally, like someone told him what smiling should look like, and he gave it his best shot with borrowed parts. There are too many teeth. Not fanged, not jagged, just numerous, like he didn't throw any away. Every baby tooth, every molar, all still there. He sees you. Of course he does. You try to snap your gaze forward again. Pretend you didn't look. Pretend your spine isn't doing that thing where it wants to unhook itself and run into the woods without you. But the moment's already changed, because he speaks. Not loudly, not with breath, just a sound that finds its way past your ears and settles directly behind your eyes. It isn't language. It's not even really sound. It's invitation. You take a step you don't remember deciding on. The lantern's weight pulls at your hand like it knows what you're doing. The flame inside flickers dangerously low, not out of fear but out of offense. The kind of flicker that says, "Really? This again?" Someone grabs your elbow, firm, quiet. You don't turn to see who it is. You just let them pull you forward, away from the left path, back into the slow current of the procession. You glance once more. The man is gone, only he isn't, because now he's in another tree, Further down, still smiling, still looking at you, you press forward harder. The others don't comment, they don't glance, they don't offer comfort, just walk. You do the same. But the road ahead feels subtly changed now, like it's disappointed in you. And from far behind, just as the trees begin to crowd close again, you swear you hear something laughing. Too many. Teeth. No mouth required. The orchard sneaks up on you. One moment it's bramble and twisted underbrush, and the next the trees arrive in orderly rows, standing polite and patient, like they've been waiting their whole lives for someone to finally behave. There's a quietness here that doesn't feel natural. It's not absence of sound, it's sound holding its breath. Even the wind is hesitant, brushing the leaves like it's asking permission first. The procession slows again, and this time, there's no need to be told. Everyone just knows. They begin to peel off one by one, stepping carefully between the rows of trees, each person choosing a different spot. A woman places a folded scarf on a crooked branch. A boy buries a small wooden horse in the roots. The baker, who earlier seemed very serious about yeast-based offerings, pulls a flat, round loaf from under his cloak and tucks it gently into a knot in the bark like it's a sleeping child. They do this without speaking, without ceremony, just offering. Then stepping back, you stand near the edge of the orchard, trying to look purposeful while mentally inventorying your pockets. Nothing useful. Some lint, a pebble you definitely didn't pick up, a button that might not even be yours, and whatever dignity remains after that whole humming episode. You glance around, as if expecting someone to offer you a loner relic, a spare relic crumb, something small and mystical to tide you over. No one does. A small girl places a half-eaten apple near a tree with lichen-like lace. She looks at you, not unkindly, and mouths the word, soon. Then she vanishes between the rows like she was never there at all. You walk. Not because you have a plan, but because standing still feels like an invitation for the trees to start making suggestions. The apples overhead aren't bright or cheerful. They're heavy-looking, mottled, the kind of fruit that probably has secrets. They don't glisten in the moonlight. They lurk. One of them thuds to the ground behind you, unprompted. You don't turn around. Eventually, you find a tree that seems less judgmental, shorter, a little bent. It looks like the kind of tree that wouldn't say anything if you used the wrong fork at dinner. You kneel awkwardly at the base and fumble in your pocket for something, anything that won't insult it. You settle on the button. It's chipped and unremarkable, likely from a shirt you don't even wear anymore. But it's yours, and right now, that feels like it counts for something. You place it at the roots, press it gently into the earth, and whisper, "Sorry, it's been a year." The wind answers, just once. A low shiver through the branches that might be disapproval, or laughter, or both. You're starting to realize those two things aren't as different as you thought. As you stand, something catches your eye, a glimmer just to the left, nestled in the crook of a neighboring tree. You step closer. It's a bundle of dried herbs, tied with red thread, humming softly, not audibly, just atmospherically. It vibrates with the same kind of energy as an anxious foot. You decide not to touch it. The procession begins to gather again, as if pulled by a quiet thread. People return from the rows without needing to be summoned. Some of them look lighter, others heavier. A few glance back toward their trees like they're waiting for a nod that doesn't come. You follow them, and as you leave the orchard, you feel the ground shift ever so slightly beneath your feet. Not in anger, not in welcome, just in acknowledgement. The story begins like all good warnings do, casually, around a fire, with too much silence beforehand. One of the older women starts it. She looks like she might have grown out of the dirt herself. All wiry limbs and cheekbones sharp enough to slice apples. Her voice carries just fine, but no one breathes when she speaks, not even the goat, who's been chewing the same patch of grass for an hour. She starts with, "There was a boy. Once." That's how these things always start. The boy, she says, had the lantern, the same one you're currently holding, the same one whose handle you keep shifting from hand to hand because it's getting warmer the longer you carry it. Not hot, just knowing. You try to hold it still. The flame flickers anyway. The woman keeps going. The boy was careless, or curious, or both. He wandered from the line. Maybe he heard something. Maybe he thought he saw someone he knew. He took a step, just one, off the procession path, and the lantern dimmed. Not out, just unsure. You glance down. Yours is still lit. Good. Someone near the back coughs. It's the kind of cough that sounds like it has commentary baked in. The woman doesn't pause. The boy panicked. He called out. The lantern flared once bright enough to show the thing standing just beyond the trees. He ran. He tripped. The lantern fell, rolled, went. Dark. They say the forest took a breath then, and when it exhaled, the boy was gone. Just gone. The flame had gone with him. No one retrieved the lantern, the woman says. It returned on its own. Burned low. Smelled faintly of ash and wet wool. Next morning it was back in the chapel, on the altar, wrapped in his cloak. The lantern, she finishes, chooses who holds it, and it always comes back. A pause. Then every single head turns to look at you at the exact same moment. Not subtly, not gradually. It's the kind of synchronized movement that can only come from long practice or very strong communal superstition. You blink. You're still holding the lantern. You're still standing at the front. Someone shifts behind you. Another person clears their throat again, but this time it's got judgment in it. The woman nods at you like she just passed along a family heirloom and fully expects you not to disgrace the bloodline. You smile, awkwardly. It's not received. The lantern hums in, your hand. Not audibly, but you feel it in your teeth. You think of asking if the story is real, but you don't want to hear the answer. You also don't want to accidentally lie. The flame does seem to notice that. Instead, you adjust your grip and do what the boy apparently failed to. You keep walking. The others follow. Not with trust, not quite, but with the kind of wary acceptance you've come to expect from people who eat moldy bread for ritual purposes and keep placing offerings at the base of trees like they might owe them rent. You glance down at the lantern again. The flame's steady now. No flickering. No strange shifts in temperature. Still, you tighten your grip. Just in case. The fire is not where it should be, which is to say, inside. Inside the chapel. Specifically, a structure very famously built from timber, thatch, and prayers written by people who clearly did not anticipate spontaneous combustion during holy observance. You see it first through the lantern light haze, orange blooming through the leaded windows like sunrise has a vendetta. Then you smell its smoke and incense and whatever sin smells like when it catches flame. Someone screams. Not the dramatic kind. More of a practical, time to evacuate wail that immediately prompts everyone into motion. The procession fractures. The skull lantern jerks in your hand as the people behind you break formation and scatter toward the chapel with the kind of urgency usually reserved for barn births and poorly timed tax collectors. You run too, because you've learned that when medieval villagers run toward a fire, it's best not to be the one slowly piecing together metaphors in the background. The chapel doors are wide open. This would be inviting, if not for the part where actual fire is leaking out like it forgot how to behave. Flames dance along the pews. The altar is glowing in a way that feels less divine intervention and more extremely poor ventilation. You skid to a stop, just outside the threshold. Nearly taken out by a woman carrying a jug of water in one hand and what appears to be a taxidermied squirrel in the other. Then someone starts playing the fiddle. Backwards. Not figuratively. Not just poorly. Actually, physically backwards, bow scraping the wrong direction across strings that shouldn't still be vibrating but somehow are. The sound it makes is both music and migraine. The kind of tune you could imagine worms humming under the soil if they had vendettas and rudimentary training. The fire pulses, and then you trip. The broom comes from nowhere. 1 second your feet are beneath you. The next you're airborne, flailing, and then landing squarely on something soft, smoky, and suspiciously waxy. You've fallen into a sermon, or rather, into what's left of one. The scroll unfurls beneath you as you scramble upright, soot and syllables sticking to your sleeves. It's written in a language that looks familiar only in the way nightmares sometimes resemble your grandmother's handwriting. The ink isn't quite dry. The letters rearrange themselves as you try to read them. You stop trying. Someone shouts your name. You didn't know they knew your name. You look up. Father Eldrick is standing on the altar, arms raised, smoke curling around his wrists like obedient snakes. His robes are partially singed. His face is partially delighted. He's reciting something that might be Latin, might be a grocery list, might be a curse. And the crowd around him is doing that thing where they're halfway between holy awe and abject horror, but definitely committed to not blinking. You make eye contact with the fiddle player. He winks. The flames rise higher. And then, suddenly, water. Not holy, not metaphorical. Just a bucket of it, hurled by a child with excellent aim and zero sense of danger. It hits the altar dead center, hissing against the heat like it's offended, and for a moment everything stops. Not goes quiet. Stops. Even the fire. It inhales. You don't wait to see what it exhales. You grab the nearest unoccupied bucket, throw something resembling water at something resembling flame, and make your way toward the exit with the kind of grace normally reserved for people fleeing awkward social engagements. Outside, the wind has picked up. So has the bell. And for some reason, the goat is now wearing your cloak. You'll deal with that later. Probably. If the chapel doesn't explode first. The circle is not drawn with chalk or ash, but with something that stains the ground, a deep, unsettling brown. You ask what it is. No one answers. Someone coughs, but not the judgmental kind this time, more like a warning hidden inside a throat clearing. The kind of cough that says, "Too late now." You stand at the edge with 8 others. One of them is humming. Another is gnawing on a length of leather like it owes him money. The eldest among them, at least in apparent age or sheer density of wrinkles, clutches a sack that seems to move slightly every time no one's looking at it directly. Names are called, not read, called, like the wind itself is reading from a list it found under a floorboard. Your name comes third, right after a boy with no eyebrows, and just before a woman who might be 2 people stacked inside one cloak. You step into the circle. The earth shifts. Not physically, but perceptually, like the ground now considers itself separate from the rest of the village. The others lie down without being told, as if muscle memory has kicked in from a tradition older than obedience. You copy them because you've learned that's safer than asking questions out loud. Flat on your back, the stars look different, closer, like someone moved them while you were distracted. You're told to hold your breath. No one says who told you, but the command arrives anyway, firm and silent and internal, the way dreams give instructions that feel like your own thoughts. You inhale once, deeply, and then let it go. And then you wait. Nothing happens, except that everything happens very quietly. The air gets colder. You can't move, not because you're frozen or paralyzed, but because movement feels illegal now. The stars rearrange themselves again, subtly. The night tenses, as if listening, and from above, there is a flutter. You tilt your eyes, just your eyes, toward the rafters of the barn. A chicken is watching you, not moving, not clucking, just sitting in the beam above you with the poise of a judge who's already made up their mind and is only listening to the trial out of courtesy. It's a scruffy thing, missing a few feathers, but its eyes glow faintly in the moonlight and follow you with precise disapproval. You exhale, too soon. The ground hums. No one moves, but you feel a collective mental flinch ripple through the other bodies. Like when someone drops a glass and it doesn't break, but everyone still feels the imagined sound. A voice, not. A voice hums from the edge of the circle. Too quick, it says. It does not clarify what happens when you're too quick. Something brushes against your fingertips. You resist the very human urge to look, scream, or sprint directly into the woods and begin a new life as a misunderstood swamp creature. Instead, you stay still, eyes up, lungs locked, hoping whatever it was is only curious and not hungry. The chicken blinks once, slowly, as if disappointed. You are not entirely sure this isn't its game. One by one, the others start breathing again. Not because they're told to, but because whatever test this was seems to be over. The circle's edge dulls. The air releases you from its grip. You inhale like it's been years since you last remembered how. The boy with no eyebrows turns to you and says, "She usually doesn't pick new ones." You do not ask who she is. You do not ask what she picks them for. You simply rise, brush the dirt from your back, and step carefully out of the circle. The chicken is gone, the sack is still moving, and your name feels slightly heavier than it did before. You're not sure who invited you. You just know that you're here now, seated at a warped wooden table under the kind of flickering lantern that promises ambiance and absolutely no health code compliance. Across from you sit 3 figures in hoods too deep for their faces, and beside you is a pile of bones that looks like it used to be someone who made poor life choices, or excellent ones, depending on how this evening goes. A cup is passed to you. Not offered, passed. As in, slid across the table with deliberate force, like a challenge wrapped in old pewter and bad intentions. Inside the cup, bones. Finger bones, to be specific, though you don't recall being briefed on whose. They're small, smooth. One of them has a little gold ring still clinging to it, as if that matters now. You're told the rules by someone who doesn't move their mouth. Shake the cup. If they rattle 3 times, you win. If they bleed, you run. There's no mention of a prize, no clarification of what win entails, just the idea that bleed is not symbolic. The bones, apparently, are capable of it. You glance around, half hoping someone's going to laugh and say it's all a joke. Maybe offer mulled cider and a seat near the fire instead. But everyone's watching, silent, expectant. Even the goat from earlier has somehow found a window and is peering in with what looks like polite curiosity. You pick up the cup. It's heavier than it looks, which is never a comforting discovery. The bones inside jostle like they're slightly annoyed to be disturbed. You try to remember if you're left-handed or right-handed, then realize that in this situation, it probably doesn't matter. You give it the first shake. They rattle. A clear, high-pitched clatter like dice on a tavern table, and everyone nods. The man to your left makes a small notch in the wood with a knife that wasn't in his hand a moment ago. You exhale, easy enough. You shake again. This time the bones spin a little midair before settling, like they're warming up. The rattle is louder, sharper. One lands upright and seems to point directly at you, but no one says anything about it. Maybe that's normal. Another notch is made. The woman across from you smiles, though her teeth don't all face the same direction. You raise the cup for the 3rd time. Pause. There's a whisper you don't quite catch. It might come from inside the cup. One of the bones shifts, unprompted, like it's stretching. You shake anyway, and they bleed. Not all of them, just one. A single drop of thick, dark crimson oozes from the cracked knuckle of what was probably someone's index finger in a more polite century. It lands with a soft pat on the wood, and the temperature of the room drops so fast your breath fogs in front of you. The man with the knife blows out the lantern. You're still holding the cup. Someone stands. You stand faster. Running seems impolite, but also life-affirming. You bolt. Not a dignified jog or a brisk exit, but a full, desperate, elbows-up sprint that takes you out of the barn, across the yard, through a hedge you did not see coming, and straight into what smells like someone's unfinished laundry. You don't stop until the lantern light is far behind you, and the sounds of polite applause, you don't want to know who was clapping, fade into the trees. Later, back at the fire, no one asks what happened, but someone hands you a cup of cider, and the ring that was on the bone is now on your thumb. The woman appears without footsteps, which you've decided is never a great sign in a village that still uses bells to scare off fog. She's old, but not in the usual dusty and hunched way. More like someone carved her out of a tree that remembers secrets. Her cloak smells faintly of rosemary and something a little burnt, and she is holding a loaf of bread so dark it seems to absorb moonlight instead of reflecting it. She doesn't say hello. No one ever does here, you've noticed. Instead, she holds out the bread and says, "A future memory. That's the price." You blink at her. It's late. You're cold. You haven't eaten since the moldy feast where you made the mistake of smelling the fish first. Your stomach stages a small protest in the form of a growl so dramatic it echoes slightly off the chapel wall. A memory, you say, of something that hasn't happened yet. She nods, like you've asked the world's most obvious question. One you haven't lived yet. Something sweet, something bitter, or something still undecided. You are not, at this point, in the mood for riddles. What if I just take it, you ask. Her smile is slow, wide, familiar somehow. You'll find that some things do not like to be stolen, especially not when they're hungry too. The loaf isn't warm, but it steams, faint wisps rising like whispers from the crust. It smells like burnt sugar, cracked wheat, and whatever memory it's supposed to cost you. You don't ask what kind of flour it is. You've stopped asking questions like that. It only encourages the goats. She's still holding it out, as though this isn't a negotiation but an inevitability, and you are hungry, hollow even, not just stomach empty, but tired in the way that feels bone deep and ancestral, like your great-great-grandmother skipped a snack, and now the debt has passed down the bloodline. You nod. She places the loaf gently into your hands, and it's heavier than expected, not just in weight, but in expectation. It feels like a promise you didn't mean to make. The crust is rough, slightly charred, with a soft center that gives under your fingers like damp moss. You rip a piece off. It tastes like firewood and honey and something else you can't name. As you chew, something inside you shifts, not painfully, just sideways. A flicker, like déjà vu in reverse. You're standing by a river, or maybe a sea. You don't know yet. You're older, laughing. A voice calls your name in a way no one here does. Then it's gone, pulled from the back of your mind like someone yanking the final thread from an old tapestry. You swallow. The woman nods, satisfied. Something sweet, she says. I always know. You're about to ask if you'll ever get it back, but the words feel brittle in your mouth, and by the time you look up, she's gone. The bread remains. You eat more than you should. Every bite makes you feel slightly warmer, slightly more nostalgic for a life you haven't lived yet. You find yourself mourning something you didn't know you loved. Later, you try to remember what it was. There's a blank spot in your mind, right between someday and if only. It begins with the wind, not a gust or a breeze, but a slow, deliberate turn of the air, like the world is inhaling through its teeth. The torches flicker in unison. A hush spreads through the crowd, moving faster than sound, faster than fear, like every spine remembers something at the exact same moment. The procession, which has been circling the chapel in that odd, stomping rhythm you were almost starting to understand, stops. No signal, no drumbeat, just silence. The kind that wraps around your ribs and tightens. Someone in front of you removes their mask. You expect a face. You don't get one. Beneath the mask is not bone, not rot, not a cheap festival trick, but absence. A hollow, humming blankness that seems to tilt the air around it. You blink. The mask is back on, but the moment stretches behind your eyes like old parchment. More masks come off. Not all at once. Some fall gently to the ground, like leaves. Others are tossed with purpose. A few simply vanish, slipping off faces as if they were never tied on to begin with. And the people beneath, if you can call them, that shift. They no longer walk like villagers. They glide, stagger, move in broken rhythms, like puppets with unfamiliar strings. The children stop chanting. One of them starts humming that same off-key melody from the Bone Bell song. You don't know how you know that, but you do. The road turns, though you swear it didn't before. The lantern in your hand flickers red for the first time. You're not leading anymore. You're following. And the dead, well, they're not pretending. They aren't wearing borrowed clothes or half-forgotten stories. They aren't whispering through others or lurking at thresholds. They walk now, full-bodied, full-voiced, full of opinions you don't want to hear. One passes you, dressed like a noble from a century no one mentions. His boots are clean, his eyes are not. He nods at you like you've met, and maybe you have. In a dream, in a warning, in the footnotes of your own name, another limps by. Her face is cracked like old porcelain. She smiles, and you hear bells that don't exist. You try to step back, but the crowd is closed in around you. Everyone is watching the same point ahead, where the road vanishes into trees that weren't there a minute ago. A voice calls a name. Not yours, but close enough to make your bones twitch. The air smells like earth and iron and something just barely sweet, like dried fruit left too long in a pocket. You feel your pulse trying to negotiate an escape. You ignore it. Beside you, someone whispers, "They only walk tonight." You glance over. The man who says it is transparent around the edges. You can see your own arm through his collar. He shrugs. Some doors only open once. The ground is softer than it should be. The trees part without being touched. And the dead continue forward. No one stops them. No one dares. Eventually, you walk too, because staying still feels worse. Because the wind now carries voices that sound like yours. Because the road behind you has disappeared. And in front of you, somewhere beyond the dark and the hollows and the hunger, someone is still singing. The fire is mostly ash now, hissing softly as if trying to argue with the damp creeping in from the trees. Someone stirred it earlier, but no one's touched it since. It glows, but barely, like a memory trying not to be forgotten. The bread is gone. Not eaten all at once, but picked at quietly, absently, as if everyone only remembered it was food halfway through chewing. Even the mold was consumed without comment. You watched one man gnaw through a corner of it with the kind of resigned determination usually reserved for tax season or barn-raising injuries. No one said grace. No one asked for seconds. People are leaving. Not in clusters or goodbyes, just vanishing. One here, one there. A woman who had been wrapping a shawl around her elbows suddenly isn't. A boy who had been drawing circles in the dirt with a spoon leaves the spoon spinning by itself. You want to ask where they're going, or how, but something in your ribs says not to, so you just keep standing there, lantern in hand. Its weight feels different now, not heavier, just more aware. The flame stays steady, a dull gold that casts strange shadows off your knuckles. It no longer reacts to lies or questions. Now it reacts to thoughts. When your mind drifts toward the orchard, it flares. When you remember the sound of that bone flute, it dims slightly. When you think about your own name, it pulses once, like a nod, and still, from somewhere just beyond the tree line, someone is whispering it. Your name, not shouted, not pleaded, just spoken like an invitation that's been open for years. You try to shake it off, kick a rock, look around like maybe someone else is also hearing this and finding it appropriately unsettling. But you're alone now, except for the lantern and the name. Your cloak smells like smoke and something herbal. something sharp. You remember the black bread and the old woman who didn't blink. You still don't know what memory you traded, but you have the uncomfortable suspicion you'll find out later, probably at an inconvenient time, possibly during a wedding. There's a rustle in the underbrush. You turn. Nothing. You adjust your grip on the lantern. Its handle is cool again. You try to piece together the rules of this place, this All Hallows Eve that never ends on time, where turnips wear faces and priests return with livestock and children hum songs they've never been taught. You remember the faces under the masks, or rather, the lack of them. It's all too much and not enough at the same time. The fire sighs once more. The wind stirs your cloak. Somewhere, a rooster crows. It's not dawn. The moon is still wrong. You hear your name again. Closer this time. You should leave. But no one tells you how. There are no roads anymore. Just memories pretending to be paths. The trees lean toward you, the way people do when they're waiting for an answer you didn't know you owed. You take a step. The lantern stays lit. You take another. Behind you, the fire finally dies. You don't look back, not because of some ancient rule or whispered warning, but because some part of you knows. Whatever you carry home now is not meant to be explained, only endured. The sunrise takes its time. Like it, too, isn't quite sure if it should show up. It peels up over the hills in cautious layers, a pale gold that filters through the cold fog and doesn't quite warm anything. The trees stop whispering. The chapel bell, if it ever existed, stays silent. There is no rooster. Thank God, the village is still there, or at least, mostly. There are fewer houses than you remember. One cottage is now just a circle of stones with a smoldering teapot in the center. The orchard is smaller. The well is closed with a lid that wasn't there last night. And where the fire had been, there's just a charred ring of soil that hums, faintly when you walk too close. No one meets your eyes. Those who remain mud-footed and morning-faced go about their business with the urgency of people trying to convince themselves everything's fine. One woman is sweeping a corner that no longer exists. A man leads an ox around a stump, insisting it's still a full tree. A child is sitting backwards on a bench, staring at something behind the chapel that you don't particularly want to see. You still have the lantern. You don't remember deciding to keep it, or choosing not to put it down. It's cold now, but the skull's eyes flicker softly, like it's dreaming. No one mentions it. No one asks. You try not to look directly at it for too long, because sometimes the flame blinks back. Your clothes smell of smoke and old milk. Your shoes are wet. There's a twig in your hair that you're pretty sure wasn't there last night, and you're missing one sock. A single feather brown, speckled, suspiciously warm, falls out of your sleeve when you stretch. You do not remember acquiring a feather. You do remember the dance, the bread, the names in chalk, the laughter that sounded wrong. You remember Father Eldrick's scroll and the sheep in the pews and the child who asked you if the moon ever followed you before. You remember the roads bending, the song that changed every time you blinked, the shadow that coughed behind you like it had manners. But you don't remember going to sleep. You don't remember waking up. You feel not heavy, exactly, just slightly more, like someone added a few ounces of story into your bones when you weren't looking. It clings to your shadow, trails behind you like something unfinished, and you are leaving. You don't say goodbye. You're not sure anyone would hear it, and besides, it feels like the kind of place where farewell is considered suspicious. So you walk, out past the half-missing orchard, through the gate that's more rust than hinge, down the way, path that may or may not have existed yesterday. The forest seems less threatening in daylight, until you notice the moss only grows on one side of the trees, and today, it's the wrong side. Birds sing, but not any tune you recognize. A low wind whistles once, like someone trying to get your attention without making a scene. You don't turn around. The feeling starts around mile 2. Not footsteps, exactly, just a pressure, a second rhythm behind your own. You speed up, so does it. You slow down. It waits. It doesn't breathe, but it listens. You pass a stream and your reflection is almost right. Almost. It raises its hand a second too late. The water tastes like apples and something else. Something old. By the time your cottage comes into view, small, crooked, familiar, it's almost noon. The sun is full now. Bright. Honest. But your shadow is a little longer than it should be, and it moves just a fraction before you do.